Well, let's talk about some of the new advancements. What do you, dude?
I think you're gonna need to have Mike take over.
So yeah, today we have with us Kevin Biernacki from Montel Racking Systems. Kevin, I know we have a lot of experience together, but can you kind of just give us some of your history, some of your experience, and take us to today where you're at with Montel?
Wow, that's a long ways. I've been in this.
Let's go all the way back,
yeah.
right?
I've been in this for 20 years, so I think well, when I first started, it's kind of an interesting transition, I guess. I was never really into cannabis at all in high school. Out of high school, I had a roommate that sold weed, and so I tried my hand at growing my first plant. Cats promptly ate it. And that was the last time I tried growing it for years. I was into rock climbing with a really legendary group of climbers. Spent a lot of time with them. They all smoked weed. I smoked it occasionally. Was never much of a super connoisseur as growing up. And from climbing, I went into paragliding. On my way back from a paragliding nationals, I spent years paragliding, and I was the U.S. team captain for the national team. And so we were on my way back from Canada from a Canadian nationals. Pulled into Humboldt County where I had a friend living there. And he showed me what he had going on in his garage. And from that point on, I was like, oh man, that's it.
Yeah.
I got to do this. So I promptly drove straight back home, packed everything I had, and moved to Humboldt County. Spent the next 12 years growing weed.
Nice.
So
it's funny how it only takes that one. It's that one little instance where you just see it and the light bulb comes on.
Yep.
Same thing happened to me, and it was all after that. The rest is history.
Yeah, I walked into his shed and he's got he had like 20, 25 lights running, and I was, oh man, this is cool.
Yeah.
And Humboldt County was funny because when I moved there, I looked everywhere for a place, looking for that right thing. And in Humboldt, what they do is they always list, when they list a house, they always list it with added bonus room. And that's kind of the key.
Sure.
That's the key to we're fully cool with you growing, and I've got a room built for you.
Those go fast.
Yeah, they go
Those
quick.
go fast up there.
So I'm looking everywhere for a place to live, and I come across this place. It sits on. It's perfect. It's got a little shed with no roof, so I have to rebuild the shed. But sits on 2 acres. It's got nobody there. It's down a dirt road. It sits up overlooking a little tiny town. So I get there, and I'm thinking this is the perfect spot. But it's an open house, so there's like 15 people there. There's people with families, and there's kids, and the kids are running around. This is going to be my room. That'll be, and right at the end, I'm thinking, okay, there's no way I get this place. Right at the end, the lady says, by California state law, I have to disclose that there was a family murdered in this house. And everybody's eyes went boing, the size of dollar bills, right? I was the only person. I was the only person to turn an application in, because right in the middle of that, when she said that, I immediately thought, perfect timing. I said, "Oh, cool. That means it's haunted," and not a single person turned an app in.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I lived there for 10 years, so yeah.
Sweet.
So how was that experience? Were you growing indoor, outdoor, a mix of both?
Mix of both.
Okay.
Got a greenhouse outdoor, and then indoor shed. I rebuilt the roof on the shed, and boy, had all sorts of different variations of grows in there. I went everything from the old octagons to tables to everything you could think of, just experimenting. Then of course I had a few other friends move up to Humboldt County. I helped them get established. At one time, I think we had 4 or 5 houses rolling. So
nice.
Yeah.
What was it like to learn in a place like Humboldt? I mean, a lot of us look at it as like the mecca of.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome being there. I was there at perfect timing.
Yeah.
Just it was kind of that's what 1 in 3 people in Humboldt County. That's all they do. That's what they do is grow.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody I knew. Nobody really talks about it openly unless you're, in it with a group. Yeah. But everybody you knew is growing. And nice. I set up a Humboldt County professor. Set up a room for him because, of course, he's a professor. He doesn't make that much money.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, it's funny, the people that are up there, everybody you see, everybody makes money off of it. So it's the industry.
Nice.
You know?
Yeah, there's a crazy little community up there. A bunch of buddies up on the hill and up in the various points in the triangle for a long time.
Yeah,
Once you break into the community, it's pretty open armed. Everybody's there to help you.
It is. Everybody's there. Yeah, and I spent a lot of time with a lot of different groups. It's funny to see. You go to a hydro store here in Vegas or any place, and there's everybody kind of backdoor and quiet, and for years. And now that it's legal, luckily, people can do it more freely. But up in Humboldt County, it was so funny. We'd just see trailers pull in, and guys would buy, thousands and thousands of dollars of
load up and don't
load
come
up,
back
and
till
nobody
you're
gives,
done.
nobody cares, nobody looks second at you. It's an awesome community.
That's great. I remember back in Colorado, we were sending different people to the grow stores because we were freaked out.
Yeah.
One of them was there was a gym. We thought it was a police station because there were so many cars pulled up there, from the guys working out from the police station down the street. So, but yeah, those were pretty awesome times, crazy wild times.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, it's just the community up there. Even on the radio station, they'll tell you on the radio station where where camp is, where they're flying, when where the police motorcades are going. They'll tell you on the radio, and everybody knows. Everybody knows where everybody's at. There's a funny story. One time we had all over the radio. They're talking about how the entire police force has come in and taken over one of the Red Lion hotels. They're all over the place. They've got tanks there. They've got helicopters coming in.
They're ready for something.
Everybody in Humboldt County is freaking out. Like they're raiding everybody, right? It's a huge deal. So a whole bunch of us. I mean, I lucked out because I was right at the early stage. I just had some clones running.
Oh, you start to pull panic, fire alarm.
Yeah, I pulled the panic button and I just chopped everything. Closed up shop, and we went on vacation for the week. It turns out they were just doing a training session and nobody.
Oh my gosh, of course.
But there were so many people that freaked out and just chopped everything.
I've been there. Better safe than sorry at some point.
Yeah. But those are the early days. Nowadays it's a lot different now.
Don't have to look over our shoulders anymore.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through kind of your transition from Humboldt into helping design and then run the grow?
Yeah, so I came down to Las Vegas when cannabis first came legal, when we got our first license and we were building out. And at the time, we had a warehouse so that was the Grove, and we had a warehouse that had 23-foot tall ceilings. And we were really trying hard to figure out how we utilize that space. Nobody had done grow racks before. Nobody had done multi-level. I'd seen some racks in some veg rooms where they were trying to pallet racking and stuff, but nobody had done a full flower room. And one day I was just trying to come up with ideas on how to go vertical. I had looked at a couple of weird wall systems and everything, and I thought to myself, why not just use pallet racking and put lights there? And then the concept was, if we're going to put lights there, the idea was, if we're going to put lights there, we're going to cook the roots, because everyone's using 1,000-watt headlights. So we're going to cook the roots, so we got to come up with a better solution. Why not LEDs?
Yeah.
And so we started looking at LEDs, and
this was like 2014, 2015, when you started planning for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody had done LEDs, and nobody had done pallet racking at all.
I was just going to say the same thing. It's back then. It's like the pallet racking thing was just unheard of.
Nobody had ever heard of it.
Nobody. And LEDs were so primitive.
Everybody just laughed when we said we were going to LEDs. Like, yeah, good luck.
Sure.
The funny thing is I picked an LED at the time, thinking, if I'm going to have to grow with this, I need my best possible shot. So what I did is I picked a grow light that had programmable spectrums. And my concept was, if I'm going to use that programmable spectrum, I'm just going to program it to what I know.
At least you have a shot.
Yeah, I'm just going to, at least I know what it is. So, but the fun thing was with those programmable lights, we were able to really experiment. So I think we're probably the very first person to ever use far red. Yeah. We were probably the first people to ever really figure out that far red did anything. And we started realizing, hey, this is stretching the plants, and we've had, cool. I know there were times we were harvesting and we were just turning lights just straight blue for a week just to see what happened.
Yeah.
And then straight red just for a week, see what happened. We're just experimenting. It probably cost us some yields, but
Experiments
it was
always
experiments
do.
were fun.
Super
Yeah,
cool
for sure.
back in the day to be able to now manipulate spectrum, right? Where everyone before was stuck in a fixed spectrum from a bulb with that complete control. I mean, I went a little bit crazy with it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
and we messed up sometimes. We messed up. It's
part of learning.
Yeah.
but to have a programmable or tunable spectrum back then was actually, I mean, that's like light years ahead of itself.
Nobody was doing it. Yeah.
Nobody
was doing it.
I trialed LEDs for like 7 years before I left Colorado, just from various people sending me, oh yeah, this guy can grow, give him a shot, send him 2 or 3. And they were all kind of, when you look at them to the naked eye, it's always like the purple kind of traditional old school LEDs.
Yeah.
So having something that you could tune is, those guys
Oh,
were
it was huge, yeah. And of course we made mistakes because it was so programmable and it was so hands-on that, occasionally you'd have somebody mess the clock up. Is it a 24-hour clock or 12-hour clock? And lights would stay on.
Sure.
And, we had a lot of learning experience. We were nobody had ever done it before.
Yeah, there's a learning curve with LEDs, right? But then there's also a learning curve when you have manipulation of your white, blues, red, and far reds from values 1 to 1,000. Then it's like,
yeah. And a spectrometer or even a PPFD, any kind of like meter was like an apogee or anything that was just unheard of.
They didn't even have. They didn't exist yet.
Like, just plug the light in, just make sure the bulb's still turning on. You're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 2017 was the first time. I think Ryan Winkle brought in a light meter.
Yep.
And we're all just confused as hell trying to figure out what these measurements meant.
Yeah, it was a fun time though. I mean, it was really interesting to LEDs have come such a long way since then. It's amazing, and what we learned. I wish I'd have known what I know now. Obviously,
of course,
right?
Yeah. So neat.
Yeah, I mean, we messed some plants up, we tweaked them, but it was fun and we learned a lot. So
for sure,
there's still so much to learn about spectrum too. We just had Yuban Zhang in yesterday. He was talking about how just blue light at the end will actually stretch a plant out more. But blue within a full spectrum light, a higher intensity of blue will actually compact the plant.
Yeah.
Fucking blew my mind. I was like, how does that work? Like,
and then
there's so much research being done now too. I mean, you look at UV, and what we know about UV. We now know that the PAR, your 400 to 700 has now really changed to what they now consider EPAR, which is just the extended PAR, and goes out to 750 and reverts back up into like somewhere around the 350 and 320 is what, depending on who you talk to.
Yep.
And so that's your new EPAR, and starting to learn the benefits of that UVA and that far red, and really understanding that.
Yeah, and there's so much to learn about that, and how to use it, and when to use it, and for what duration to use it, and what time in veg or flower is beneficial.
Yeah, and a lot of discovery in UVB, and I think from what we've seen is with the UVB is that your plant forms a response to it when it starts seeing that UVB.
We talked about that a little bit yesterday.
Yeah.
So it starts seeing that response, and just like with any
defense mechanism.
That defense mechanism is really where we get a lot of our terpenes and a lot of the stuff that goes on.
For sure.
So you're looking at what they've seen is that your plant will form a defense to the UVB if you leave it on solid, but if you pulse it. Pulsing it is really key. We were talking about that
exposure time. It's so sensitive, and when in the flowering cycle you actually expose the plant, and then the length that you expose the plant. There's a lot to be.
Yeah, and then it's that cost benefit, right? If you can increase some secondary metabolites or terpenes, cool, but that doesn't affect yield in a positive or negative way. So it's figuring out that balance too.
Yeah, and the technology is going to come along where we will start most likely pulsing UVB, and you're probably looking at some of the more sophisticated places will have personnel sensors. So that it doesn't go on while you're in there. In fact, that may even
inside the grow room. I'd be pulsing you all day.
I know.
Do you remember when? Did you ever turn those helios all the way red before in the rooms?
I have,
just the red and the far red. Messes with your head. It's
does.
crazy going in there. You're in there for 30 seconds. And just feels wrong.
I know after learning what we've learned, the little we've learned about light, I guess, in the past 5, 6, 7 years, after all thinking about all the exposure that we've had to the UVA and UVB from the single end to double end lights over 15, 20 years or so, it's like...
Did you grow under CMHs a lot?
Did we what?
Did you grow under CMHs a lot?
No, I actually...
MHs?
When that whole fad came around, I guess I'll just, or whatever, movement came around, I was mixing... I would put one or two on like a track. Just, I don't know. I didn't have a whole lot of faith in the plasma or the CMH. Just kind of was sticking to what worked. But
I was just trying to figure out why you were so compacted.
Not enough far red in his life, right?
Stretch you out a little bit.
Thanks,
more,
Mike.
Put you in the red room. See
Thanks,
what happens.
Mike. No, but the CMHs, they definitely gave a better terpene profile. It seemed like it made them frost a little differently.
Yeah.
But they just weren't. It wasn't a dense, powerful light. They're only 315s. You'd have 2 of them if you were lucky, and then they started doing the combinations of the 315s with the double-endeds and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so much to really learn and so much more to really dive into. Something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is that with just like with the UVB, that pulsing, giving that terpene profile because of that defense mechanism. There's also something that we've lost when we've gone to pots or we've gone to cubes of any sort, right? We've lost that interconnection of the mycorrhiza between plants, because in plants, they communicate between that form, and when one plant is nutrient deficient, the other plant can actually send nutrients to that plant. But at the same thing, if a plant is been attacked by an insect, the other plants, it informs the other plants around it to build up a defense for that, and that again is a terpene profile. So by being able to have that interconnectivity,
like in a bed,
I mean, in a perfect world, I mean, you wouldn't do that obviously in a commercial sense, but in a perfect environment, you'd have that interconnectivity through the mycorrhiza in the base of the soil, and they can communicate, and you could tweak terpene profiles even by stressing one plant out and forcing the others to build that defense mechanism.
Can you bring us through some of the things you were one of the first people to say, hey, let's go vertical, let's rack this out, and let's go with LEDs. What were some of the things you kind of learned early on, being kind of one of the first to do that? Good, bad. What did you learn to improve on?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot to learn there. I think mostly what I've learned is just to trust my instincts on what I'm seeing and what because we had a lot of diagnosis of things we needed to, trying to tune in that perfect CO2 with the intensity of light we're running.
Yeah.
Just some things that we didn't know back then that we know now.
Just from even like growing using mechanical lifts, right?
Yeah.
That was brand new. So it's like, how do we develop a process behind this?
You're MacGyvering it the whole way.
Exactly.
Because you're pioneering. You're literally pioneering.
Yeah.
So
it's...
Yeah, we found these single person lifts, and they were, that was kind of the key.
Yeah.
See everybody hanging out
As
the
long as
lifts.
Kalani wasn't driving it.
Yeah. Because we didn't think about scissor lifts at the time. We were looking for something small because we didn't have the room at the front end of the place. Now that we do racking, we look at that as a primary thing you have to look at when you're building out. You need that front end room from the nose of the rack to the wall.
Absolutely.
To be able to maneuver lifts in and out.
It's like bumper carts in there.
Yeah. Otherwise you're tearing stuff off the walls.
Yep. I got stuck in the drain one time.
Oh yeah, completely.
So it was like this, and you push off the wall and try to get out.
Is that what you guys suggest at Montel to get to the different tiers, to access the tiers?
I think to me it's the most efficient way. If you've got the lift, you can move the lift in so quickly, especially if depends on the size of your facility. If you're only 2 stack level, then I might use something, some form of platform. We've got a thing called a speed deck that you can walk up and you can actually basically pull yourself along and work that second level.
Oh, cool.
But there's limitations to your decking. You know, I mean, how long does it take you to put up? How long does it take you to tear down? I mean, for most places, I could take a lift in a big facility, and I could tear down the whole room, harvest the whole room in the time it takes you to get your scaffolding put together.
Sure.
You know, so really, I like that. I like the lift, the scissor lift option, because you can condense the racks together on both sides of the scissor lift, and you could work two sides of the aisle.
Nice. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's just if you have the room and you can move the lifts around, it's fast, it's efficient.
Yeah, I like that you guys do that, because that's always one of the biggest challenges with the different racking companies. It's the catwalk isn't very practical.
Yeah.
You know, climbing up ladders and stuff to access the second tier isn't the greatest thing for some of the employees and kids.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, once it gets to a point where, you know, you're GMP certified, or OSHA comes in.
OSHA's messing with everybody.
OSHA's
right now.
coming, you know, and so you're not going to be able to do scaffolding. You're going to have to be clipped in. You're not going to be able to do a straight up and down staircase. You know, straight up and down is, first off, that's one thing that we designed, was to have a easy step up system instead of having a staircase, because you can't carry anything up a ladder.
Absolutely.
You want a step, you know. So that was kind of the idea behind the speed deck. Yeah, I think, you know, you just hit limitations on what you can do with that, but
Sure. But you know, obviously you can double your output, or I guess triple, if your team's motivated enough and wants to work the 3 tiers.
Yeah, and if you've got, I mean, I worked a facility in California where it's a huge room. You know, it's 60 feet long, it's a little over 40 feet wide, 3 stacked, 3 tiers, and so
It's a lot of product in there.
Yeah, it's a lot of product, you know, and a lift. I mean, we could tear that whole room down in a day.
Wow.
You know, with the lift. So I just don't see you doing that with scaffolding, but
You said 60 by 40?
60 by 40. Yeah.
And you're almost cramming 7,500 square feet in that little space.
Was that triple tier too?
Triple tier.
That's what he said, triple.
Yeah.
There's so much transpiration going on in that room. Think about the top's got to be a whole other
It's a whole
environment.
microclimate. Yeah, it's a whole new thing. Yeah. Ways to mitigate that, obviously, you know, we try to do as best you can. You try and force the air down. The way we did that is we had all the AC ducting that pushes the air into the room, all around the interior, exterior of the racking system, and then drawing the return on the interior, trying to really kind of force that air into the center and pull it back out, and trying to mitigate those, you know, some of that microclimate that goes on in there.
That makes sense, because obviously the exterior, you know, the perimeter is gonna have good airflow, but that middle is just a wet log.
Yeah, and it's the same thing we learned, you know, at the Grove when we first opened the Grove, being the first people to run the racking system. Is, wow, there really is quite a microclimate difference here.
I know.
You know, and so we would put our anything that was going to turn purple, or anything we wanted to get cold or keep cold, or we would put on the bottom rack. So we'd put all our stuff that was, you know, really the way I told everybody to do it when we were working there is put the stuff that you don't want to tend to, or things that you don't need to tend to, at the top.
Yeah.
Put the things that you need to tend to more, that are more delicate, that take a little bit more training, or you need the high maintenance. Put them at the bottom, because you're going to be on the bottom 80% of the time.
Absolutely.
You're going to go on the top when you have to.
Sure.
So that was kind of just the way we learned to do it.
Yeah, it's definitely way warmer up top. I know in the greenhouse, when I go up on the ladder to do something, it's like, man, it could be another 30 degrees.
Yeah.
35, 40 degrees even on some days.
Yeah,
I
and
guess.
if you grow them big too, and you start blocking airflow from those sidewall fans too, it just enhances those microclimates even more.
Yeah.
So figuring out the right.
But as your room gets bigger, that actually lessens, because your room gets bigger. You have much more air mixing. So the bigger that room gets, you know, the less that is. But of course, you know, you have a size that you don't want to go beyond, because
it's too much of a volume.
It's too much of a volume. Well, it's too much of a risk also if you have a pathogen or a pest outbreak of some sort. You lose, you know, the last thing you want to do is lose $1 million room, you know.
Absolutely.
So
I remember we tried almost every way to orient those fans too. We did all of them facing this way, all of one row this way, then one row going this way, the next row going this way. Tried everything.
You gotta mess with
just
it
to see what would work, right? I mean, it was interesting for sure.
Yeah, Yeah, and Mike worked for me at the Grove, so yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it was good
We
times.
had a good time. Yeah,
The early days were definitely cool.
yeah.
Can you walk us through kind of what you learned from the Grove and then how you took that to your next place too? You've kind of been one of the first people to do it, learned, and then kind of implemented, some of the things you've learned into designing another place, and now you're back with Montel. So you've learned a lot and been able to kind of, streamline the process a little bit and make things better.
Yeah, and the good thing is I came to Montel with those ideas in my mind too, is to try and better the system that they were designing, and they've taken a lot of that to heart, and they've designed a lot of that stuff in. Really trying to eliminate some of all of the interior of the rails, having that C channel, trying to make that smaller, trying to get that less things hanging off of it.
Yeah.
Because that harbors dirt. And
Yep.
if you're harboring dirt, you're harboring potential insects, potential other pathogens. So we're trying to clean that and keep that clean is a high priority. So by kind of redesigning the rail systems a little bit, trying to eliminate all the holes, all the places you could harbor that kind of stuff.
Making those rooms easier to decontaminate is huge too, because the cracks and crevices you can get within that type of system.
Yeah, if you can simplify that in any way, by all means. It's not like we probably would use 70% of the adjustments in there even, right? So
yeah, you don't. And it's nice to have that ability to adjust, you get in 2 increments, so you can kind of customize your room. After that point, you don't use them all at a
right.
time.
Yeah, you're usually at the 4, 5, 6, and within a
and I see people
here
getting
and there.
shorter and shorter. When we first started the Groove, we had almost a 7-foot span, so we could grow plants in. But then
7, 8
again,
feet.
but
You had
then
8
again,
foot
we
tiers?
also had a fixture that hung low, so it was a box fixture with a fan in it. So there was some room there. We had to have them on pulleys so we could raise and lower them.
That was the shoulder workout for the day. 224 of those.
crazy. That's a whole
Between 4
bunch of
rooms.
work. Yeah, as you're experimenting though, didn't really know back then. Higher's better, so it makes sense.
Well, it's the form factor of the light too, right? When you're using a compact LED, you got to pull it up so you get that spread
Absolutely.
too.
Yep.
So it's a balance between that. Now with the bar style fixtures, your light level uniformity is way better, and it makes way more sense. That's why you don't see a lot of those compact fixtures like that in racks now.
Yeah, you just don't see it. The bar style rack is. The bar style light is where it's really where it's at.
Yeah, it just
The
makes sense.
uniformity of the canopy and everything else is key.
Definitely. What do you see the future for kind of racking, if you will, growing vertical?
Well, we're seeing a huge transition. Kind of the cannabis. For the most part, cannabis has kind of really jumped and leaped the food production industry in ways that I don't think they realize.
Yeah.
That they're looking at racking now, and the cannabis industry kind of really started with that whole concept. LEDs started with that concept. So there's a lot of food establishments now looking at going multi-level.
Okay.
And so we've got a lot of lettuce growers. We've got one big lettuce grower up in Denver that's they're 13 levels high.
Wow.
So yeah.
13. The tiers have got to be smaller.
Yes, the tiers on a standard for lettuce, you're looking at anywhere from a 16 to 18 inch tier.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
so
you can-
yeah, there's a ton of tiers.
How much maintenance does that need? Like, are there people going up and down all the time too, scouting?
They are. The
checking
way
things?
the way they do theirs is really efficient. They actually run forklifts,
Okay.
and it's a stand in front forklift. So a person stands in the front of that forklift, and they as they go up, they unload their trays.
Okay.
And they're using a flood and drain tray type system. So it's real quick. They have their plugs already put into a tray. It locks right in place, and so it's a really efficient system. It's really unique.
Nice.
We've
That'd
got
be neat to
others
go
that
check out.
are working on doing some really unique things. Conveyor belts that lift up to that surface, so you don't even need people going up there anymore.
Just automated.
Automated. It
All the
puts
way.
the tray in. The tray goes to the top. By the time the tray gets to the end, it's at its perfect harvest date. It goes down the other side. And
You're
there you go.
producing food at that point, so that makes sense.
Yep.
Efficiency is key.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is food growers aren't looking for 1,100 or 1,400 ppfd on their plants, like cannabis is.
They also don't get $1,500 to
They don't. It's not
$2,500 a
big
pound.
crush. Yeah, it's not a huge cash crop, is it? They're looking for volume,
For sure.
so yeah, they're only running at, for lettuce, they're only running 200 ppfd and probably looking at around 600 ppms for CO2. They still run CO2 higher.
Yeah, and it's a rather low maintenance crop too. You can kind of, more or less set it and forget it.
Fast turnaround. Yeah, it's pretty much hands off. So
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and the density, they found that density, kind of perfected that size of plant.
Are
where
they in Rockwell?
everything has. No, this particular one was in flood and drain type system.
I was going to ask you about the fertigation because as you go up 13 tiers, it kind of gets to be pretty interesting, right?
Yeah.
You're fighting gravity, or you're either working with gravity or working against it.
Yeah.
I tried flood and drain in veg after you left. I fucked that up.
Well, just to go,
Yeah.
sending water up.
Well, we had limitations
10
to our
feet is-
fertigation system at the time that I put in, and so we had to kind of pick and choose. So for veg,
Oh, yeah,
we
I had the same
stock tanks on
fertigation
top of the
system as you
racks,
guys.
and we would send it to the stock tanks on top of the racks, and then gravity feed it down, and then keep it going down all the way until it drained out the bottom.
So you guys had water stored up top?
Yeah, and move
Yeah.
the rack. It was,
Well,
it
we
was
had to do that.
Crazy.
We had to do that.
Crazy.
We had to do that early on because you remember this was the first facility like this, and the concept was we were going to use soil, right? And so we went with the autopot system, where
Okay.
it feeds, so it needs a gravity feed. So that's why we put the stock tanks
That
up
makes
there.
sense.
That can work and it can't work.
Soil
That's
and
the best I
racks
could say
is
about that.
super crazy.
leave it at that, right?
Yeah. I have some buddies that are very crazy about that system. They just love it. It's just not for me.
Yeah,
personally.
it does. It has great use for certain
Absolutely.
for certain aspects. I think it's fantastic. But at the same time, it's got some limitations.
For sure.
So
It's challenges.
Yep.
Yeah, we switched to hand watering for a little bit after those, and that was crazy.
Yeah,
Double
I
tier
can't-
hand watering.
I didn't know you guys
We're-
had soil up on the. I ththought you guys were in cocoa the whole time. So
No, we were in
soil to
soil
put up on the
pots.
racks. That's just oh my
Overkill
gosh.
pots too. We're in 6-gallon pots.
Huge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'd
you
have
know,
guys,
again.
one on a lift up top watering, one guy in the bottom watering. Like we're shooting
Moving so
just
much soil
organic shit
around.
on each other's
Yeah,
heads. And
that's
that. Like
crazy.
it got pretty wild.
Freaking mess too.
Yeah.
And you can imagine lifting all those pots up on those upper shelves.
Oh yeah.
Lifting
And
those
they get
pots.
cracked and then they leak and then you got a leak blown into a fan shooting shit like 10 feet.
Yeah.
Got interesting.
Yeah, I remember submarining a few lights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely fucked up a lot of stuff. I learned from it, but
Yeah.
you kind of learn what could work and what could. Yeah, it was interesting.
No, it was a great experience, really.
Definitely.
I can't imagine nowadays, with the size of facilities, anybody could really hand water, or anybody would want to.
Yeah.
Oh, what's crazy?
I mean,
how many
even those
people
rooms-
do still?
It was
though.
I know, I
2,000
still see it.
2,000
I
square
still see
feet
it.
and 6 gallons of soil. I mean, we were going through 50-gallon drums every row, one row. So, like, sometimes 16, 20 a room. And they're hand mixing.
I was just gonna
nudes,
say,
they're
so
throwing
you
the
had to get
pumps
up
in
there and
every
fill
time.
all of those up. I was.
We would have a kid doing the nutrients, loading up the next barrel, throw the pump in the next one, have the guy go. Like, we made it as efficient as we could. We could hand water a whole room. We get there at 9 and we sometimes be done before lunch if we were doing it.
That's moving.
Yeah. I mean, and sometimes it would take the whole day.
Yeah.
If you had one guy trying to do it himself, like going down, watering the bottom, moving, like going up, watering the top, moving the rack, like trying not to get any water on the floor because then it's going to fuck everything up. When
How do you
you're
know how
trying
much
to dry.
water to get to each plant?
I mean, you
We
don't.
just count,
but
you know,
my
we just
guys at the
count.
beginning, like when I would have them transplant, we'd all go lift all the fucking pots. I'd make them lift 100 pots and get the weight of it dry. I'd have them water. If they overwatered, I'd make them lift the pots and realize how it was too heavy. Like before, if they thought they needed water,
Super
I'd make them pull
high tech, I
20
know.
pots. So we were just
crazy.
lifting
Yeah.
pots and being like, yeah, today's
The,
the
the,
day.
That's
the
okay,
funny
just
thing
manage it.
is learning from that and having to drag 55 gallon drums all around.
Yeah.
With pumps. On the second facility I built, just in the event that we had a irrigation issue, because we were all irrigated at that point.
Yeah.
You know, it's all drip irrigation. But in the event that we had a clogged line or something happened, we had to, you know, remedy that or do an emergency hand watering, I put a spigot at the end of every single row.
Nice.
So it's just there. It's
you
plumbed
do.
in.
You're
So,
like, there needs to
Yeah.
be fail-safes built into
Yeah,
this.
there has to be an outlet.
because there's no way of dragging to that size of facility. You know,
Yeah.
it was a 76,000 square foot facility. You know, 3 levels.
Yeah,
So
it's crazy.
it's a lot of lights.
It's crazy how long it took the cannabis world to kind of click into a drip irrigation when there's companies like, you know, Netafim that have been around since the mid 60s, and
yeah.
we're just like tunnel
Yeah,
vision.
and Netafim has really come. You know, they were outdoor agricultural irrigation, and you know they're really focusing hard on that interior. That's what we used in California facility, and it worked great. It was
For
an
sure.
inline injection.
It's
you know, worked
definitely
fantastic.
pretty darn accurate.
Yep. Yeah, we used it pretty. It worked pretty well. I can't imagine. Yeah, I just can't imagine the old hand watering days.
I was just thinking of the places
I'm glad I
walk into.
experienced it because I mean, you learned a lot. I learned a lot from it. I learned seeing different systems, changing systems.
Yeah.
Like, it was really cool to kind of learn in that environment too.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know the new thing too is, you know, this whole mycology thing. You know, people growing mushrooms. That's kind of that's the new wave.
It is. It's as, you know, there's a pretty big movement. It's coming back. Places that can't make money in cannabis anymore.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a big mushroom boom.
Yeah, I could see it getting oversaturated quickly though.
They
Right? You know, I mean that's the problem.
they grow pretty fast once you get
Yeah.
them going.
Yeah. But just mushrooms in general, you know, all of your turkey tail and your reishi and your cordyceps, and you know that's the you know this funny thing
The
is
good ones.
there's a new movie
Fantastic. Fun
the
guy.
Last of Us.
Okay.
If you watch that movie, it's about
Fungus that kills
fungus
people, right?
it's about fungus that gets it was about cordyceps.
I think I just watched that.
Yeah.
Cordyceps are fucking gnarly.
Yeah. So they grow out of insects
Yeah.
and they take over their brain and make them go to a specific location
Pop out
that is perfect for them. They make them bite down on the leaf until they're secure,
Yeah.
and then they kill them, but they kill their brain and keep them alive, and so they can incubate, and then they pop out of their body as a mushroom. It's crazy.
There's a good clip of that. I think it was like Planet Earth or some shit like that shows it going up and
Yeah.
popping.
And that the new show
Wild.
that new show is about that exact thing. That a cordyceps that had gotten out of control in a lab and infects people, and then within days the whole entire planet's like
Yeah.
infected by
Well, I mean, there's a cordyceps that affects like every insect basically, right?
yeah.
And specifically for that insect, I think is a different type of cordyceps,
Yeah.
which is fucking gnarly.
Yeah, but it made me start thinking. You know, I was playing around. I'm playing around with mycology myself, and ways of making mutations. And one of the ways of making mutations
Don't
is using
start
UV.
this shit, Kevin.
No, so using UV, you can make mutations. What it does is it takes the genetic profile, and it starts forming bonds.
Okay.
And when the genes try to fix those bonds that aren't normally there, it makes a
Mutates.
mutation.
Okay.
And so what's happening is you can take like a UVC.
I was just going to ask which one you're using.
Yeah, you're going to do about 235 somewhere in there, UVC, and you can blast the genes of the of
How
things.
much exposure? Because that stuff's pretty toxic.
Yeah, you don't
right?
want
I
to
mean,
you don't want to expose yourself.
you don't want to be in
obviously.
the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
It smells like a fucking laser printer after you use one of those.
But you can tweak them a little bit, and so you know
Crazy.
after the movie I was thinking, man, I'm gonna start tweaking cordyceps.
You gotta don't let it cross over.
Yeah, that's funny. No, but I mean that's a fun thing to experiment with. Though.
Yeah, definitely. You've seen kind of early LEDs and learned from those. What was your transition over to Fohse? Because at the facility you went after the grow, you utilized Fohse in a lot of those rooms, correct?
I did, yeah. I used a lot of the Fohse lights. So what we did is we had a competitor of yours. I won't mention their name, but we had a lot of failures, and they wouldn't. We just didn't get really good response out of them. You know, we were failing lots of lights. I had piles of light bars, and so I saw your fixture. We got a couple of them, and you guys sent us a couple of them to try out. Seemed like it was working really well. The plants were responding great to them. I really liked because on this other fixture we had to have like 30 different dimmers because you could only dim so many lights per rail, and so you guys had a single iPad basically that could dim the entire room. I could change the entire room all at once, and so I thought, shit, we need to check this out, and so we converted one of our rooms over to Fohse, and it worked so well we just kept converting. So I mean that facility ended up 400 and something lights.
Were you guys running F1Vs or what?
F1Vs, yeah.
F1V 800s,
and we actually had you guys customize them, which was cool to be able to have that opportunity. We had you customize them down to 800 because we were a little bit tighter on our spacing, so we didn't need them to be 1,000 watt.
Sure, makes sense.
So we had them customized down to 800, and with our canopy spacing, it worked out perfect. We were running right around 1100, 1150 at the canopy. So
nice.
It turned out really good.
Yeah, I was using the F1V1000s around that same time, just testing them from Fohse.
Yeah,
and those 8-foot racks, and it was a fun light to play around with.
Yeah, for sure.
We've got some of the early day pictures where it's like the 6 Fohse or videos too, and then you go into the room and just the different hue of the light. It was crazy too, right? Because that was that transition from kind of those blurple style lights over into kind of an easier spectrum to work under for sure.
Yeah,
those things. I mean, do you remember? If I was working in a room all day, sometimes I'd go outside and see the sun, and it looked like a different color.
It does.
It was like you got to give like 2 or 3 minutes, and then you're like, shit, like so you come back to normal.
And I've always had the the LED glasses where you can wear them. So
we always did.
Yeah.
I was just
but I never you never wear them, right? It's like,
they're always on your head.
Yeah.
Well, because
they're
back
always
in the
on
day,
my desk.
Yeah, you had like that weird blurple hue, and then the LED glasses were like dark green. And it helped a little bit, but it was still off. Like it still felt weird, and it was like way harder to see, to scout, to do stuff like that too. So I mean, the cool thing is you could flip them back to just a white light if you needed to scout or something.
Yeah, and that
like
was the key. That was one of the keys why I picked another reason why I picked the programmable light was because at the time everybody was purple hued, right? Nobody had that white light, so I needed to be able to diagnose plants.
Yeah,
and so that was one of the keys, was getting rid of everything but the white, so they come back to their normal color.
Yeah,
you could see.
You can actually see what they're doing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, everything just always looked purple.
It's so purple.
Yeah. Oh man. So yeah, you could never diagnose plants under a purple light. You really need that white. That was another thing that was, I always tell people this. I was like, just because it stuck out to me, was Alex coming out. We had an early, because we were trying to wire them ourselves, and we had an early technical issue, and I called you guys, and they were trying to walk us through it, but we weren't getting it, and so Alex, I think he must have been taking his private pilot's license or something. He was like, hey, I'm gonna jump in a private plane, I'm gonna come out and fix that for you.
Nice.
And that was like, well, all right, I think our customer service is fixed.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and speaking on GLP, they opened up at the same time we did.
Yeah.
They were an early player too.
Yep.
And speaking of living soil, I mean, he does an amazing job.
He kills it.
Oh, they do such a
cool
fantastic
to watch what
job.
they were doing.
Keeps those plants kind of interconnected.
Yep.
I like that.
Their product is sold out everywhere. As soon as if I'm lucky enough to find it once in a while, it's usually getting brought from the guys. So.
Yeah, it's good to see them go LED too. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, they're a big advocate.
Yeah,
that Great Pie rosin is nice
for sure. They've had a lot of luck with the Steve was over here a few weeks ago for the open house, and he was just saying how how much fun he has with the A3i even after 3+ years of messing around with it, just dialing it in, playing with the different spectrums and just the different variations that you can get out of the plants and plant response with the the blues, the far reds, and just the middle summer spectrum.
Yeah, and he even grows beneficial plants in with his canopy to help mitigate insects,
cool.
and I think that's pretty cool. That's just a cool natural way to do it.
What he's doing is a pretty awesome thing that obviously it's not easy, or else everybody would be doing it, but the quality comes out in the finished product.
For sure, he continues to evolve. Like Steve is continuously changing things from like figuring out how he needed to wrap his beds with saran wrap to keep the moisture consistent, to helping people design a bed that would create more consistency within the moisture, to bottomless pots to reduce transplant shock, right?
Yeah.
True.
Growing different companion plants, like
Yeah.
you were saying, he's learning and adapting to his ecosystem, and he continues to improve, which is super cool to see him constantly evolving too, because he's kind of setting the benchmark in the forefront for taking living soil indoors. So
Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
definitely cool to see.
Yeah,
and
I've got a person right now that's talking about building up in Oregon. They're talking about building a 4 levels.
I was just going to say 6-tier living soil.
Yeah, it's going to be living soil, and I don't know.
There's so
you
much
know,
weight on
There's
the
so
racks
much
at that
weight.
point.
Well, so that's the thing is with Montel, what we have is we have the our green rack, what we call our green rack, was kind of specially designed for agriculture.
Okay.
And it has a 2,700 pound.
Little more heavy duty.
It's actually our light duty. So, but it'll hold 2,700 pounds, and it's our light duty version per 4x8 bay.
Okay.
2,700 pounds. Our next one is the grow and roll, which is kind of one of more of the original ones. That's a 6,000 pound bay capacity. So we have to go for the living soil. We're going to have to go with that 6,000 pound capacity because
You have to go with like the highest saturation level.
absolutely,
kind
and with that height, obviously with seismic issues and
For sure.
because Oregon does sit up on the Cascade subduction, so
Roll
it does
bars.
have some.
What's the final height of that then? Is that 20? That's above 20 feet?
Yeah, he's up almost. I'd say he's closer to 30 something feet.
That's wild.
Sick.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a little bit of an engineering feat.
It's the grow and roll.
That's what I said.
Oh, no, I thought you said green roll.
Green rack was first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I misheard that. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a compliance issue for OSHA.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be an interesting if OSHA comes in on.
They
that,
don't really,
they're
you
gonna
know
have
what, though? They just kind of started poking their nose in, so we'll have to edit that part out. We don't want them to poke their nose in more.
Yeah.
Don't call out OSHA.
Don't mention OSHA
They'll
at all.
find you.
We don't want to mention
I
OSHA.
remember when we actually got harnesses after you left, trying to figure out how we get certified in a cannabis grow to be tying off at the second level. I fucking gave up after like 2 days. I'm like, I don't even want to have to try to figure this out. Get back on the jellies.
They get weird in the city of Las Vegas, I know, and just with like building codes and permits when you go above 12 feet.
They do. Yeah.
So it's 30's crazy.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, after growing with Fohse and now working at Montel, I know a lot of people also use our lights in that system. What has been kind of your feedback that you've heard from people, utilizing similar systems that you have in the past?
I mean, there's been a lot of good feedback. The thing that I do like about the Fohse is that it's, the bar light system, and you can tuck it up in the rack. And so one of the things that we see a lot of, like when we had at the Grove, when we had that box light, basically, you lose a lot of space. And
Definitely.
so if you've got whatever your height is on your ceiling, you're trying to maximize the space in your grow environment, in your grow area, and minimize the what you have sticking out, basically. So if you have a light sticking out by 8 inches, well, you lose 8 inches off of your grow. So
Well, and when those racks go together, it's gonna hit, bump, pull.
Yeah.
So
So having that basic 4x8 footprint, is really nice. But being able to tuck that light up underneath the rack inside the tray, the railing on the sides, helps, mitigate that distance.
definitely.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty slim. It's a pretty slim fixture. I think it's only right around like 4 inches, so pretty compact.
Yeah,
And-
and it fits well. And so Montel, we have pushed people to look into the Fohse light. Kind of look. This is a ideal light for our system, and we've seen some good response. There's a new facility opening up here in Vegas actually that's going to be pretty dynamic, pretty amazing.
It's gonna be cool to see. They're triple tier, right?
They're triple tier.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll be neat.
Triple
they got
tier.
big- their ceilings are what, 30 feet? Or something,
I
right?
think they're close to 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing from going in there. That's
Yeah.
not.
But yeah, they're triple tier. all Montel racks, and are running all Fohse lights, and yeah, that's going to be a pretty
that'll be a
pretty
fun one.
amazing spot.
For sure.
And you know, quite honestly, I don't know that they've really found what the real limit with cannabis is to how much PPFD can take, as long as you can pump the CO2 up.
Euban was talking about that. I mean, his experiments are going
down
300 to 1800, and he's showing linear yield increase.
Obviously, there's going to be a point of diminishing returns, right? I mean, there's going to be a point at which
when you start to roast,
right? And it's figuring out that limiting factor, whether it's nutrition, the genetics.
Yeah, but you're going to be how much CO2 are you pumping in? Yeah. You know, how much that cost you? How much does your nutrients cost you?
Exactly.
How much does your power is going to cost you?
Yep.
Right.
At some point, you
can't grow 5-gallon bucket buds. So
yeah.
Right.
And so I mean, there's that curve someplace along the way where, you know, you're gonna have to stop right there, otherwise you're just costing yourself money. So
yeah, and it's different between cultivars too, which is crazy. It's like a lot of these other growers, I mean, you're not growing, I mean, some of these facilities are growing 100 different varieties. It's like, can you imagine walking into a lettuce place and they're like, so we got 100 different types of lettuce?
Yeah,
it's like, you don't see that, right? Like 2 to 3, something like that.
Yeah.
We have like in the mid-20s right now in the greenhouse, and it's too many, but we're trying to just figure it all out.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can narrow it down, slim it down, the better.
Yeah, sure. And the whole food thing, you know, I mean, that's really coming along. I think you're gonna see a big market there. I think Definitely. You guys are gonna see a big market there. I know you guys are working on a light specifically for
Coming
food
soon.
Production. Yeah.
Oh.
So I think it's a big market. Definitely something to look at. You know, something that's really, we're seeing an increase in. I would say probably almost 50% of our calls now are coming in for food production. So, okay. Well, you know, I mean, it's awesome that Fohse has really pushed their product out there and gotten people to really see it, and really, you know, and partnering with you guys is been a pretty cool experience. Especially it really brightens our booth up. So yeah, no, it's been a great. I think the partnership is working well. I think we're see a couple of big projects coming really soon that are going to be pretty dynamic. And I know we'll be doing some filming there.
Yeah,
I'm sure you guys will be doing some filming there.
I'm sure we'll do some collaboration.
People will get the opportunity to really see these operations and how they function. So,
we're excited to work with you guys. You guys make great products.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, we try to make everything's made in North America, and you know, we strive for perfection. So
it's always a good thing, made in USA.
The integrity of those racks, I can speak to it because I've tested that. And, yeah, they're durable for sure.
For sure.